Welcome, everybody, to the Soul of the Unexplained. I am your host, Jim Kelgard. That's right, Jim with two M's, one, two. Yeah, baby, that is moi. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And if you'll forgive me, this is going to be, well, actually, I know most of you won't forgive me. You'll be applauding this. Today's episode is going to be rather abbreviated for two reasons. Number one, it's divisional playoff weekend in the NFL, man. Right? And but seriously, those of you that know me, that are connected with me on Facebook and whatnot, know that I've been suffering with a rather severe infection in my upper jaw for the last couple of weeks. And so, on a scale of 1 to 10, as far as pain goes, with 10 being absolute excruciating, unbearable pain, right now, I'm somewhere in the 7 to 8 neighborhood, so not feeling so great. And I'm actually having surgery in, let's see, this is Sunday. I'm having surgery in 2 days. In less than 48 hours, I'm having surgery to remove uh, my teeth in my upper jaw, and I'm going to be getting a new set of choppers out of it. But needless to say, if you've ever had toothaches or infections in your mouth, it's an extremely unpleasant, extremely painful. And so, because of that, I'm not sure how much I'm going to be able to hang with y'all and talk today. So, we won't be going our usual 90 minutes or 1 hour or 2 hours. Rather, it'll probably be more in the 45-minute, maybe an hour, depending on how the conversations go today. But joining me as we have today, and who is always somebody we can rely on here, is my absolute favorite Denver Broncos fan and my hitchhiker bandmate, Mr. John Nyberger. And John, I do have to, on behalf of Raider Nation, I offer my sincerest condolences on your Broncos. Um, but at least you guys made it to the playoffs, right? How are you doing, buddy?
You know, exactly. We made it to the playoffs, broken the playoff slump. So that last game was a little rough, though. That was kind of painful to watch. I don't even think I watched the whole game. It was that bad, but
Yeah.
still, we made it.
That's right. So that's at least something to celebrate. My team, the
Yep.
best thing we have to celebrate is I think we have what, the number 6 draft pick coming up because of how horrible my Raiders did. But but no, I today is my second adopted team aside from the Raiders would be the Bills, because I'm from upstate New York, and the Buffalo Bills are actually the only New York team that really honestly plays in New York State. For those of you that didn't know, both the Jets and the Giants play in New Jersey, not New York. So the Bills are in fact the only true authentic New York based football team. So uh, to that end, and I have to offer my sincerest apologies to the Stratton family, especially John Stratton. Uh, Go Bills! I hope they beat the Ravens.
I
I
was
don't.
wondering if they were football fans and kind of who they rooted for.
I don't know. I don't know how Jay and Michelle are, but I know that I know at least John. One conversation I had with John when the football season began, when the Raiders were playing the Ravens, and he was cheering obviously for the Ravens. John Stratton was, but speaking of the Raiders are one of the few teams that beat the Ravens this last season. So go figure. The Raiders finished, I think, with only four total wins on the season, which sadly has become all too familiar being a Raiders fan. But but one of the teams they beat was the Ravens, and the Ravens are now playing against Buffalo in the divisional playoffs. So uh, football is a weird thing, man. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Jay or Michelle actually have a football team in the NFL that they root for, but I think John, I think their son John is a at least a casual Ravens fan. So if I'm wrong on that, John, apologies. But
And we'll find out.
still, go Bills, right?
I hate
Any
to say it, but yeah, go Bills.
or ABC, anybody but Chiefs, right?
Yes. Anyone but the Chiefs.
I'm sorry, Linda. Linda Simpson. I know you're a huge Chiefs fan, but Yeah, I'm so, yeah, we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Anyhow, folks, also before we get started, John and I, we wanted to provide an update. Roger, quite obviously, my co-host here for the Soul of the Unexplained, co-creator and brother from another mother, Mr. Roger Stokes, is unfortunately still unable to join us. And he's asked me to extend to all of our subscribers and listeners and to all of his friends that are out there his gratitude for the wonderful messages that he's received and for the prayers and good thoughts offered on his behalf. Regrettably, Roger is suffering from some very serious heart troubles, and he was expected to have a major surgery to correct the issues that he's been having just a few weeks ago, just a short time ago. And unfortunately, circumstances came up that are not allowing that to happen. And so Roger is still, unfortunately, feeling rather miserable. His condition is not what I would call a positive one. He could certainly use the continued support and encouragement and any prayers that you can spare and send his way. I know that him and his wife Brittany would super appreciate it. So, to that end, Roger, know that we are all still missing you very much and wish you could be here to participate in these discussions because who else is going to keep an eye on me and rein me in and make sure that I don't go too far off the deep end. So you are definitely missed and you are definitely loved, Roger. And we cannot wait to get you back here here in the Soul of the Unexplained with us. So with that, folks, please join John and I in extending that positivity and good hope and goodwill to Roger with for a hopefully a quick and complete resolution to the problems that he's been having lately with his health issues. So, to that end, John, let's dive right in. There has been so much going on in the news lately. Um, and quite obviously, we talked, I think, in our last podcast a little bit about the drone flap that was going on, and some say is still going on over on the East Coast in New Jersey and New York and Connecticut and some other places like that. And we're not really going to focus on that today. We're going to talk more about, quite obviously, this big bombshell revelation that occurred last night. Legendary journalist Ross Coulthart on News Nation brought forth another special program, much like he did 2 years ago when he brought David Grush out of the shadows with that now iconic interview that he did with David Grush that kind of got this whole modern day disclosure, snowball rolling full down the hill when he interviewed David Grush. And so last night, he had another whistleblower that came forward in the form of a gentleman by the name of Jake Barber. And I have to say, John, I did watch the live stream. I watched it live, and I made it a point. If you remember when you and I were talking about this interview that was going to be coming up, my whole big thing was okay. Just because of the nature of the UAP field and how there's so much is not what it really truly seems to be, and so much of gosh, who do you trust? What is real, right? Uh, I made sure that as I watched this, heading into watching this interview, that I had very low expectations of being wowed for starters. I made no pre-assumptions that this was going to be as big and massive as it was being sold as. And on top of that, I also made sure to really just kind of keep things, keep my expectations tampered as well as I could. And I got to say, John, I'm glad that I did because, and this is gonna this, and I'll preface all of my comments for everything I'm going to talk about today, saying that for starters, I am not a physicist. I'm not a scientist. I'm just a regular guy. I'm just a regular average person. I don't claim to have any special knowledge about any of the stuff that John or I are going to be discussing today. So these are just strictly my own observations, applying my own, albeit inefficient, inadequate logic, I'm sure some would say. But so just my opinion on the things that I observed. And I have to say, John, right out of the gate, um, there were a number of things in the interview with Jake Barber that did stand out that were very interesting and very compelling, very credible or believable, at least on the surface. But then there were also some things where I was like, whoa, step off the gas. Let's ease up on this. I'm not quite ready to buy into this full sale, on some of the things. So, just as a general overview, what are you left with? Here we are, not even 24 hours after that interview has aired. What's your kind of some of your key takeaways of what this interview with Jake Barber was all about?
Yeah. I think you could sum it up by a simple sentence. I don't know what the hell's going on. I thought initially I was expecting to be underwhelmed because of his association with Greer, who I don't trust. Most people know that. I don't trust Stephen Greer. Um, During the interview, I was thinking this guy is actually pretty compelling. He comes across as someone who believes what he's saying. And even more compelling to me at the time were the other gentlemen who were corroborating his story, particularly the lieutenant colonel, former Delta guy. I heard elsewhere he was former Dev Gru, so SEAL Team 6. So that was the image I had of, okay, here's this badass former Delta dude, and he's supporting this guy. Surely he's telling the truth. Why would he lie? That was what I was thinking at the time. The video I found less compelling. It kind of looks a little fake to me for several reasons. And I don't know if you want me to go into them now, but we can get into them later. But yeah, there are a few things about the video that bother me. So, and then I did a little more digging, and we found out some things since the airing of the interview yesterday that just made me have thrown me into like a tailspin. Like, I don't know. I can't tell which side's up anymore with this story.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of in the same spot that you are. There were the gentlemen that were corroborating his story, in particular, I also felt were very credible. And near as I've been able to investigate the resume of particularly what's his name, Blitch is his last name.
Yeah.
Um, Very, very impressive resume that he has. So, like you say, I thought that Jake Barber was articulate. He did not seem to really have body language that was indicative of somebody that was trying to, you know, mislead, uh, deceive in any kind of way. But again, I'm not a body language expert. Um, Still, like you said, with the video and then the actual account of the retrieval. And the other thing that's kind of been a big red flag for me, and you pointed this out to me this morning, John, because after this whistleblower special aired on News Nation, immediately after that, there was a slightly over an hour long podcast of Roscoe's reality check podcast that he does pretty much every week. And he had Merrick von Rennenkamp and Tim Gallaudet and Dr. Jim Segala, who of course used to work with the team at Skinwalker Ranch back in the 6-7 years ago or so, uh, to kind of do what we're doing, to kind of break apart and analyze what they saw in that interview. And the thing that stood out to me like a sore thumb after you brought it to my attention, John, is that Ross Coulthart says in that reality check podcast that aired after the interview that the footage that was being shown wasn't actually filmed by Barber's team. That wasn't the actual extraction. Did I get that right?
That's what he said, and I thought that was a little misleading because that was not mentioned, as I recall, at all in the original interview. And I think
Pre-
that's important because
Precisely.
he's giving his barber story and says, and now let's watch the video.
Right.
Everyone is thinking this is the video that Barber has provided to him.
Right.
And then he says later, "Oh no, this had nothing to do with Barber. It came from a completely different source." You know,
Right.
give me a break.
Yeah, and that's
So
and
either
that's
edit it
that's
out or what, but it's misleading, and I don't like that.
that's just it. Why? What is the whole purpose of transparency if you're going to pull something like that? I mean, that's almost like a classic bait and switch,
It
right?
was. It was.
I mean, honestly, because that was, if you remember, John, and you and I were texting each other all throughout as the interview was airing, the things that we were like, wow, this stands out to me, and this stands out to me. And the number one thing for me was, first of all, at least for the beginning part of the interview segment, I was like, wow, this guy is really, really believable. And then the guys that he has there corroborating him, the special forces guys that are like, yeah. And then I don't know, I don't remember if it was Blitch or one of the other guys that actually said, yes, there is a retrieval program and recovery, and and it was just so matter of fact, just an absolute assertion, much similar to the kind of assertion that Carl Nell made earlier last year during the what was it, the SALT conference,
Yep.
the Wall Street thing, where Carl Nell said there is zero doubt that we are in contact with a non-human intelligence here on planet Earth. Um, so it was kind of that kind of vibe. He had that kind of level of assertion that Carl Nell did when Carl Nell made those remarks uh, in regards to, yes, there is a secret retrieval program, and it's compartmentalized, and it's not directly involving the government, although the government oversees it in a way, but it's these individual independent defense contractors, aerospace companies, or how they all described it. And then it starts going down this rabbit hole of there was a firefight between these contractors, right? Was the way it came across to me. Is like you had Barber's team where all of a sudden being fired upon, hostile fire by presumably either another defense contractor that was there to do the same thing, or some other some other third party. And so it's like it starts becoming like this, like this really scripted Hollywood movie, right?
Mm.
And that's not to say that it's not possible. And I'm honestly saying, folks, I don't know. I'm just spitballing, talking out loud, and that's what John and I are doing today, because we don't. First of all, it's too early for us to formulate an absolute opinion on any of this. Was the interview significant? I will say that yes, I think the interview was significant. It was important. But is it going to end up being more like the David Grush interview, where here we are 2 years later, and that is still kind of the standard for, really great, well done journalism in bringing this topic out to the forefront? Or is this most recent one going to fall into more of the category of the classic, alien autopsy video that Fox did back in the mid 1990s? Uh, and the answer is it's too early to know. It's too soon to know. There are some people that have already made up their mind, that have already said, yes, this is absolutely categorically what it was sold to us as being. It is the categorical retrieval of a non human intelligence craft. And there's no question about it. And if you question it, then you're the problem. And then you also have the other side that are like, whoa, this is not at all, this is very clearly fake. There's this and this and this about the video that just doesn't add up. And now all of a sudden we're jumping into the realm of psychic powers and, the realm of comic books and science fiction. So,
Children being kidnapped,
right,
you know,
exactly. So it's like,
all of this stuff.
yeah. And John, This is the inherent problem of what's plaguing this UFO UAP field writ large, right? I mean, you have some people that come forward that are just they just are a beacon of trustworthiness, and I would put certain people up there like that. I think, I happen to trust Dr. Gary Nolan for one. I think he's a very level-headed person. I happen to place a lot of trust in Tim Gallaudet. I place a shit ton of trust in Ryan Graves and David Fravor. And I know many of you will disagree with me, but I also still trust, to a fairly large extent, David Grush. But then we have these other characters that come on that seem to really be plugged in, that have information, that are out there putting information out there. And I'll name a couple of those names right now. These are people that make me go, something just doesn't feel right, seem right, or sound right. And that would be, forgive me, Jeremy Corbell, and the other one would be Lou Elizondo, and as you said, Dr. Stephen Greer. Now, I've talked a number of times, folks, about my personal opinion on Dr. Stephen Greer. I don't have an axe to grind with any of the three of those individuals. I don't have any, I've never met Corbell, I've never met Lou, and I've never met Dr. Greer. And I highly doubt I ever will on any of the three of them. But I, in me saying what I'm about to say, I'm not saying that I think they're bad, horrible people. I don't. I just don't think that the way that they communicate and the way that they present themselves doesn't add up. There's just something about it that doesn't feel right. And if that's just me being wrong, I fully admit that that might be the case. But there's a lot of disappointment I have with Jeremy Corbell right now. There's a lot of unanswered questions I have about Lou and a lot of unanswered questions I have about Greer. Greer, I think he started with his heart in the right place. I think his heart, I want to believe it is still in the right place, but somewhere along the line, it seems that he started to believe his own celebrity and that somehow he is the anointed one that is to bring all of this stuff out to the masses and to show us what is really going on. And unfortunately, there's just, I just, it's a bridge too far. Some of the things that he brings up and some of the things that he's pushing just are not logical to me. And I realize how rich that is having a Raiders fan try to lecture anybody about logic, right? So, again, that's just my opinion. And folks, you're welcome to agree or disagree with me, but there's just things. And again, I'm not calling Greer dishonest. I'm not making accusations against him. I'm just saying what I see. I'm not seeing anything that says, okay, I'm going with this guy. Now, is there things that Greer has brought up in the past and that he's brought forward that have withstood the test of time? Yes, absolutely, he has. And to that end, that's one of the reasons why I don't completely discount everything that he says. But then there are other things that me trying to be a rational person, and I realize that's going to be a reach for some of you to think of me as being a rational person. But still, there's a lot of things about Greer that he's trying to put out there right now that I can't buy at face value. And again, maybe it's the way that he articulates his points. The fact that he seems to be so confident that it's his way or the highway. And if you don't believe what he's saying, then you're the problem. So to that end, I guess I am the problem. And if that's what makes me the problem, then guilty is charged, and I'll wear that as a badge of honor. But there's just something about Greer that doesn't add up, and you're going to hear that phrase a lot from me. Um, so then let's move on to Lou. Lou Elizondo, I think he is a patriot. I think he genuinely loves his country. But I've heard enough and I've read enough things that make me question, and he's even walked back some of the claims that he's made about his own experiences and his own things that he's claimed in his resume. He's kind of walked back a little bit. Um, why would you do that? Why would you make a claim knowing full well before you make it that it's not entirely accurate, knowing that it's going to be portrayed by people as being accurate? Um, that's not a good way to operate. And I realize he comes from, allegedly, it comes from an intelligence background, and that, in intelligence, there's a lot of deception that goes on. But still, Lou is out there, you know, promoting himself, promoting his book. He's trying to get on every talk show and it seems like every appearance. And does that alone make him somebody that we should be um, doubtful of? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Because if he really truly does have this knowledge, and if it is the truth, quote unquote, the truth, um, and again, whose truth? We don't know. Is it his truth or is it the truth? And is there such a thing as the truth? Is the truth objective or is it subjective? And there's a lot of people that will argue that ad infinitum. But Lou just, I have a hard time getting behind everything that Lou says. I feel that a lot of the comments that he's made, and I've said this in the past, I feel that he's kind of painted himself into a corner. And the problem is, he's been touted as being the guy, was one of the first people that came forward when the New York Times article broke, right? Um, so he's kind of become the face of the new modern era of disclosure. But there's just so many things about Lou that seem contradictory. And we don't have the time to go into all those. But then there's Corbell. Okay, Jeremy Corbell. Um, I'm one of the few people that actually enjoys watching a lot of his documentaries. I loved, still really enjoyed his documentary about Bob Lazar. Um, and I find it such an odd partnership with him working with George Knapp, because George Knapp is kind of got the proven track record in history of really truly vetting his sources and not speaking in absolutes and not teasing information if he knows that he can't back it up. Whereas Corbell seems to be kind of like Lou and Greer. All three of them seem to be driven by some kind of an ego to, and I this is not a proper way to articulate this, so I apologize. But the only word that comes to my mind is that they're trying to self-promote themselves. It's about their ego. It's like their ego has to be satisfied by being the guy that brings all this information out. And it's almost like they need to retain that celebrity status. And again, I don't know these guys from Adam. I've never met them. I don't know if that's really the kind of personalities that they have. If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. And I fully admit that I may be wrong on that. But just what I'm seeing so far, until such time that I do get to meet them and get to see more of who they really are, um, there's just something about these three that seems to be causing the waters to not be clearing up, but they're muddying the waters, because they're all saying different things. It's like you've got Greer saying all these ETs are benevolent and they're here to help us progress to the next level of our evolution as humanity. And then you've got Lou, who's like, well, sometimes these things are hostile and they are a threat. And it's like somewhere in between, hopefully, those two is the truth. And Corbell is just all about, you know, again, it's like, well, look what I did. I submitted this report to Congress. And so far, only Tim Burchett has stood up and admitted that. And to that end, Corbell does have a point. If Corbell was the one that brought that report and submitted it that day to Congress, then he should have been recognized for it. They should have called out his name instead of Mike Schellenberger. That was really weird to have this documented thing on video showing Corbell submitting it to the congressional aides in that hearing, and then only to have Nancy Mace recognize Mike Schellenberger as the one who brought the Immaculate Constellation documents to Congress to be read into the congressional record. Only Tim Burchett was the one that actually mentioned um, Jeremy Corbell in assisting with that. So, again, John, I know that you understand, and I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on this because I've been talking way too much, and my mouth is killing me. But do you feel some of the same that I do? That instead of moving forward, and I saw this quote on X today before we started recording, where this woman was saying, "We took one step forward and we took one step back," and she's right because here we are, and we're really still kind of finding ourselves in the same spot that we were before this interview came to light, right? I mean, are we really truly one step forward? And I have to honestly answer, I don't know, because it seems like instead of clearing anything up and providing any greater degree of clarity, it's just muddying the waters more and more. Because you've got these people that are just convinced that they're the ones that know the truth and they have the knowledge, and they're saying that, either this is real, like what Coldheart and Barber were showing us last night is real and it cannot be debunked, or you've got the people, the usual suspects, let's call them, that are only out there to debunk and to marginalize and to mock anybody that wants to look at this seriously and says, well, there may truly be something anomalous here. So, John, where are you in all of this mess?
Well, that gives me a good segue. To start off with, I agree with your assessment on all three of those guys. I start to worry when these personalities start to make themselves the story instead of just continually pointing at the story. It becomes, instead of look at this information, it's, hey, look how great I am for uncovering this information.
Which
You
is
know,
exactly what Greer does. I mean, you watch
yeah,
any documentary he's done, it's always, I briefed this president. I
yeah.
briefed this national security director.
Well,
I'm
and
the one.
Corbell is turning out
It's,
the
it's
same
like,
way.
it's like, okay, great. Here's your prize. What do you want?
Yeah. And my worry is, um, and that sets up exactly what I wanted to talk about. My worry is that that makes them very eager to be the guy.
Right.
They want to stay relevant. They want to maintain their status in the UFO community. I think one of my biggest worries right now that has been overwhelming me the past few weeks, and I am one of the least conspiratorial people you will ever meet. I hate talking about conspiracy theories. I hate talking about the deep state or these dark groups, working behind the scenes. I just hate that stuff because it's so uh, ambiguous. People usually they just refer to the people they don't like. Well, that's the deep state.
It's
You
a
know,
way of fear mongering. And what is
right?
fear?
I
Fear
hate that
fear is a system of control.
exactly. So I don't buy into that crap. But the past couple weeks, I have been really concerned that we're being played. Like there is at least one group playing us. Like, for example, I don't think the Immaculate Constellation document is real. I think Corbell is being played. There's one obvious falsehood on the very first page in the very first paragraph that should be a sign that this is fake. And that doesn't mean the whole thing is fake. That's the other problem is you don't know, maybe part of it's true and part of it's not. And you don't know who gave it to Corbell. We don't know why they did it. Not relevant for this discussion, though. The point is, I think I'm really starting to feel like we're being played by somebody. And I was going into the Coltart interview yesterday with that in mind, like especially because I don't trust Greer. We already established that, and Barber is associated with Greer. Like I don't believe the Jason Sands story. I don't believe Michael Herrera's story. I just I don't.
Mhm.
So going into that interview yesterday, I thought it was really compelling. I didn't really buy into the video evidence. But I was looking at these guys that are supporting him. I'm thinking, okay, Gary Nolan seems to think he's legit. Jim Segala seems to think he's legit. Tim Gallaudet seems to think he's legit. And I'm like, I trust those guys. So, and then you look at the interview itself, and it's got Lieutenant Colonel John Blitch, who you think is some badass former Delta, former SEAL guy, you know. And I'm like, yeah, why would they lie? Why would any of these guys lie? Fast forward to this morning, what do we find out? The first thing I find out is that the video had nothing to do with Barber's uh, program at all that we know of. We don't know where that came from. It wasn't provided by Barber or anyone associated with him, as far as we know. That was
Right.
someone completely different, and that was not mentioned in the interview. I think it's
Right.
misleading, and again, is a sign that we're being played. That was the first clue. I'm like, okay, that's kind of interesting. That made me think that Barber's story was more credible, because the biggest problem I had initially with his story was the video. Like, I don't trust his video. There are some things about it that don't look right to me, several. Um, because in my mind, I'm thinking, why would these other guys that are supporting him lie? Then I find out that 4 weeks ago, Barber was on News Nation talking about the New Jersey drone flap and how his company, Skywatcher or Skywatchers, um, is working with the Department of Defense. I don't know what capacity, but if they're angling for contracts with the DoD, or they already have contracts with the DoD, why would he then, a few weeks later, come out and allegedly spill highly classified material and then have any expectation that these contracts for his company would remain in place, or that any new ones would be forthcoming, when what's more likely is he would just be arrested? Or
Right.
if the DoD said, hey, we can't arrest him because that would make it look like it was all true, but they would, at a minimum, cut off all their contracts. So I'm like, this doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
Like, that doesn't make sense. So that's the second thing that was bugging me. It's like, why wasn't this mentioned? Um, then the third thing hit. I thought, well, I went back to, well, why would these other guys lie? So then I said, I have no idea who this John Blitch guy is. I'm going to, check him out. I found his resume online, and yeah, he's a very highly experienced guy, but it's in stuff you wouldn't expect. When they say former Delta Force, former SEAL Team 6, Dev Gru guy, that forms an image in your mind, and they didn't provide any other information. You look at his resume, he's a research scientist. He's worked for NASA. He's done work for DoD. He's worked on advanced unmanned aerial systems for DARPA. He was a vice president at SAIC working on advanced robotics. You know, so that provides a little different picture. Now I'm starting to think, well, what if, and this is now we're in pure speculation, but this is again is what we have to work with because we don't know the whole story. We don't have enough info.
Right.
But I'm thinking, what if they are lying? If this is false, if you wanted to get more defense contracts, how do you do it? You need to get Congress, and you need the DoD to give you money. And one good way to do that would be to stoke fear with the public, so that the public puts pressure on Congress to do something. You should be doing something, about these UAPs and about, whatever they are. Because right now they have this picture that we're doing nothing about them. There's this drone flap, the government's saying we don't know what they are. The public thinks, well, we aren't doing anything. Now you've got these guys saying, yes, this stuff is real. We've got people firing on each other. We've got kids being kidnapped. It's horrible. That what's that going to do? It's going to increase fear. That will put more pressure on Congress to do something, which could potentially in turn lead to maybe more money going to these defense contractors who are in on it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's what's happening, but I'm saying that's what I'm thinking. That's the type of stuff that's going through my head right now is what is behind all of this stuff? I don't know. I have no idea. I can't explain it. I feel like we have a lot of pieces of some giant puzzle, but we think we have a lot of pieces, but we really only have 1% of it,
Right.
if that, less than 1%. And without the rest of it, how do we have any hope of figuring out what the hell's going on? Because here's another thing. You said it. I trust Gary Nolan. I trust Jim Segala, and I trust Tim Gallaudet. But if they support Barber and Barber's lying, and these other guys that are with supporting Barber are also lying, does that mean Gary and Jim and Tim, more specifically Gary, because Gary is apparently part of Skywatchers or Skywatcher. I can't remember the name of the company. What does that tell us? I'm like, I can't figure this out. Like what there's too it's too hard to figure out everyone's motives in all this. It's too easy to do guilt by association because we don't have all the information, you
Yeah.
know. But we
And
don't have a lot else to go on. And I'm just really worried that all of this is just us being played somehow for some reason. And you know me, I'm a
well,
UAP
here's
believer. I believe in NHI. I believe there's probably a craft retrieval program. I believe we probably have craft materials.
yeah.
All of that I think is true.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean I think this is true. You know,
Right.
I
Well,
can't
no,
figure it out.
you've I think you've hit everything. You and I are very much in lockstep, I think, on pretty much every aspect of this. Because let's take another example before we move on and start to wrap up here. But Jeremy Corbell's UFO Revolution, which is available on Tubi, which is a free service if you have Roku, or something like that on your TV, you can watch it for free. And it's sponsored by TMZ. Now, for a lot of you, and perhaps rightly so, that right there should be a red flag. TMZ is involved. Um, and, that's not for me to say definitively one way or the other. But one thing that came out of left field with Corbell's second season, there's 3 episodes that just aired this last week, and it's in the third episode of season 2 of UFO Revolution, where Corbell, at the very end of the episode of episode 3, talks about, and many of you out there have probably heard this before, how there is allegedly this large craft that is making its way slowly to planet Earth from somewhere out in the cosmos, and it's supposed to arrive at in Earth's orbit sometime around 2027. And I've heard that, and it's one of those things that I'm like, no, just doesn't pass the smell test. And Corbell, to his credit, says that he's heard of this. He has seen the documents where this rumor of this craft that's headed to Earth in 2027, where that originates from. And I think I have a pretty good idea of which document it comes from as well. But to his credit, Corbell says it's a lie. It's a complete fabrication. It's um, I guess we would call it a psyop of some kind, right? And so it was good to hear Corbell say that he thought that, that was BS. But that also plays into Greer's narrative of how the government is planning a false flag alien invasion to institute the New World Order. Okay. One step away from Alex Jones' InfoWars with shit like that. And just to be clear, okay, we're talking about the guy that said that Sandy Hook was all a bunch of bullshit and that the kids were all a bunch of actors and that nobody was killed at Sandy Hook. That's what I have to say to Alex Jones and any of you
Yep.
that think that that was true, because
110%.
you do not live in reality if you buy into any of that kind of bullshit.
Yep.
Point blank.
100%.
So Greer is kind of pushing that. Now, do I believe that there is extreme corruption within the United States government? You bet I do. And you don't have to look very far to find it. Do I believe that there may be a secret government within the government doing certain things? Yes, I do. There is always a possibility of that. But Do I buy into all the other stuff that comes along with it? No, I don't. I don't believe the ridiculous things like 9/11 was an inside job or anything like that. And until you show me incontrovertible proof, then I am never going to believe that, because it's too out there. And I know I've got a lot of friends that are convinced that 9/11 was an inside job. Folks, I'm a New Yorker. That's something I take very seriously. I know people that were at the Pentagon when the attack happened at the Pentagon. I know people who died in the towers on 9/11. So to me, that's not something I take lightly. I lived through that moment the same as everybody that was alive when that happened, when those incidents happened. So I don't buy into conspiracy theories. I never have. The only one that I will admit to that I do kind of believe in is the Kennedy assassination. I do believe that JFK was killed by rogue elements within our government with possible ties to certain members of the mafia. That's the only conspiracy that even remotely, in my opinion, still holds a little bit of water.
Yep. I kind of
But
agree with it. Yeah, I
but
agree.
but getting back to Corbell and UFO Revolution, talking about this lie of this gigantic spaceship on its way to Earth, and that's why disclosure is slowly rolling out, is to acclimate us for this big shocking moment. Later that very day, if I'm not mistaken, Lou Elizondo makes a claim where he full on says that something is coming. And by something, he means there's an object that is headed for Earth. Um, okay, elaborate. Oh, well, I can't. I've signed NDAs. Well, okay, great, Lou, but then shut up. You know, if it's really truly that important, something that has the potential, like if there is an alien spaceship coming to Earth and it's going to be here in 2027, then wouldn't that be something worth, violating for, because it applies to not just the United States security, but it's the entire planet? I mean, come on, let's be real. So again, there are things that just, like you said, John, just do not add up. This is, you know, like the classic saying goes, oh, what a tangled web we weave when we practice to deceive.
Yep.
And that's exactly what we see going on. And that's what makes this topic so fraught with what the hell and what the,
Mhm.
you know,
I just thought of this. It kind of reminds me, my day job is network engineering, troubleshooting, occasionally troubleshooting some incredibly complicated problems. It's never just one thing went wrong. A series of things are happening. And more than once, many, many times in my career, we've been sitting around, a group of us, looking at all this data, going, none of this makes any sense. Like, this doesn't make sense. That can't happen, or that can't happen, or this can't happen. And I always like to say we're missing that one thing. We're missing the one thing that the one piece of information that makes it all make sense. And then afterward, you're like, oh, okay, now I get it. Now it makes
yeah,
sense. We're missing all of that. And the people who have that information aren't going to tell us.
right.
That's the real problem here, is the people who actually can clear all this up probably can't, because it's still classified.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of people that could come out today and say, well,
Yeah.
okay, here, let me explain this, let me explain this, let me explain how this other thing works, and here's what really happened here, and here's kind of why this person did that, and here's why this event occurred, and here's why
Yeah.
this other person said this the way they did and not this other way. But they can't.
Mm-hmm.
So we're left to speculate, and we're like, the guy, we've got newspapers taped up to the wall. We've got strings tied to
Mm-hmm.
thumbtacks in a web, trying
Yep.
to figure out how this all makes sense. And what really drives me crazy is you can't even boil it down to a binary. Is this true or is this false? You
Right.
know, because most of these people are probably telling partial truths and partial falsehoods.
Right.
And we don't know which is which. And
And
we
they
have
may
a way
and they
to determine which is which.
and they may not even know that they're pushing a falsehood. They
And
may be,
that's
they may
yes.
because they know of the one absolute truth, and they just think that it fits in with this, and so they may be pushing a narrative that is, like you say, partially false because they themselves have corrupted data that was given to them that even though it supports, fact A, fact B also meshes with that, but fact C, mm, a little grayer, So
We all
it's
have biases we have to work
yeah,
against.
yeah, and we
You
do,
know,
and again, folks, just to lay this out for everybody so that you know. No, I am not on the alien extraterrestrial hypothesis bandwagon. I don't think that that is the answer. Is it one possible answer? Yes, but is it the most likely? I don't think so. Uh, is the crypto terrestrial or ultra terrestrial hypothesis the explanation for some or all of this? Maybe. We don't know. Interdimensional. There's a great series that came out recently called Cosmosis, where Kelly Chase and a bunch of other people talk about.
Christopher King, Kelly Chase, all of them.
They do a fantastic breakdown of all these hypotheses, and the interdimensional. Yeah, it's kind of like an applied everything that, but we really don't know anything about interdimensional. How would we know if something is interdimensional? Would we know if
What
it
does that even mean? We don't
What
even
is
know
it
what
exactly? We don't know what it means.
that.
Does that mean ghosts? Does it mean angels or demons? Does
Right.
it, is it something where, a portal opens up like on Doctor Strange in the Marvel Universe and someone or something comes through it? Um, we don't know. That's all that we have is we just have stories. We have folklore, we have legends, we have myths, and we have eyewitness testimony, but we don't have anything that can be quantified. And the closest that we have come to anything like that is the work going on at Skinwalker Ranch. And I'm going to say one word about that. And yes, folks, you bet your ass I am biased when it comes to Skinwalker Ranch. Why? Because number one, I know the gentlemen that are out there doing the scientific research. I can vouch for the fact that they are men of integrity and they are honest and they are being as transparent as they are able to be with the data. And scientific investigations take time. They're not something that can be resolved within a 42-minute episode of a docuseries on television or even throughout the space of multiple seasons where you have anywhere from 8 to 15 episodes to investigate what's going on there. But what I do believe about Skinwalker Ranch is something that Brandon Fugel said, and I believe it was either on um, Sean Ryan's podcast or Jesse Michelle's, somebody like that. And did I say Michelle? Is it Michelle's or
You said
Michael's?
Michelle. Just
Michael's. Sorry, Jesse. Um, but where he basically said, I think that a lot, if not, I think the truth is going to come from privately funded endeavors much more quickly than it will from any government source. And again, folks, if you need the government to tell you whether or not something is real, then you need to reevaluate who you are as a person and what you define as reality. Because if to define your reality, you need somebody to tell you what it is, then what are you? Truly. I mean, if you witness something extraordinary, you know that you saw that. You know that you experienced it. And you don't need anybody to validate that for you, right? So if you're somebody who, unlike me, I've never seen a UFO or a UAP that I'm aware of, but for those of you that have, you know what you saw. You may not be able to categorically say, oh, well, it was extraterrestrial or it was crypto terrestrial, ultra terrestrial, whatever term you want to give to it, but you saw it. If you saw it and you felt it in that moment, it was real. Any of you that have had sightings of ghosts or, like in my case, the shadow being experiences, there is no question in my mind what I experienced, especially with the most recent one, because I had somebody in the room with me and we both saw the same thing at the same time. So you can't tell me that we need to rely on somebody else to tell us to validate that what we experience and what we see is real. So relying on the government to be the manager and the the superintendent, if you will, of what we define as reality is misplaced trust. Okay. And now I get that, there are some people who just do not follow this topic, and that's the only way that they're going to be brought in on this is for the government or the president or somebody to say, well, yes, we are not alone in the universe and we're not alone on this planet. Uh, does that carry weight and gravity? You bet it does. But should that be the only source that we get whether or not something is true? Categorically, no. I say no. So, folks, do yourself a favor, do your homework, and do not, for the love of God, do not let confirmation bias cloud your judgment. If you're somebody who just automatically gloms onto it's ETs and I know it and I'm just convinced and nothing you say can convince me otherwise, then you're the one who's placing the limitation on your reality. You're the one who's placing the limitations on what really truly may be quote unquote the truth. Or if you're somebody who says this is all bullshit and nonsense and you all are just being deceived, the same applies to you, my friend. If that's
They
how
might be right.
exactly, exactly.
At this
So
point, I don't even know anymore.
so so folks, truly just do your own homework. Don't fall into the trap of celebrity. Just because somebody who is a notable personality says that something is so, sure, weigh it, take it into consideration, but do your own fact checking. And more than anything, use that gray matter that is inside your head. And we all have a brain. Some of us are better at using it than others, and certainly I'm not one of the betters, but um, just apply a little bit of logic and reason. Because, like John said, folks, I do believe that non human intelligence exists. I do believe it is possible that we have a non human intelligence sharing this planet with us, whether they are an original species that was here before us or shortly after we got here. I don't know. Is it a possibility? I think it is a possibility. Is it a fact? I don't know. Is it a possibility that there could be extraterrestrials that are coming from other star systems, other planets, other galaxies that are coming to Earth for whatever purpose? Yes, I believe that is a possibility. Is it the only possibility? No. And anybody who tells you otherwise, you should question that, because you can't you cannot deal with an absolute with something like this that is by its very nature an unknown, right? Because we don't know. And the only way you're going to know is something just if there's like a massive event where everybody, like the Phoenix Lights, where you have thousands or tens of thousands or millions of people experience it at the same time. Then you can say, okay, then it's real. But again, what is it? Is it crypto terrestrial, ultra terrestrial, extraterrestrial, or is it
Time
all?
traveling humans from the future.
Yes, time
That's
travel.
another
Is it
one.
extra temporal, intratemporal, whatever the phrase is on that? But yes, folks, that's all that I would caution and advise. And none of you have to take my advice. I mean, I certainly, who am I, right? Again, I'm nobody. I'm Jim. I'm a musician. I'm a father to three amazing kids. I'm a New Yorker, so I have an opinion, and I'm gonna, anybody asks me my opinion, you're gonna hear it, whether you like it
You're a
or not.
Raiders fan, so you're confused about your opinion.
I'm a Raiders fan, so I'm confused about a lot of shit. And my mama dropped me on my head not once but twice.
I think
So
that happened to me
there's
too.
that.
Starting to notice that after since I shaved my head, I'm feeling some, dents that
Yeah. But I truly, folks, I have no ill will whatsoever, even towards the people that I've mentioned today. I don't dislike Corbell. I don't dislike Lou. I don't dislike Dr. Greer. I just find it difficult to accept what they are presenting at face value. And if I'm proven wrong on any of those three, I will be the first one to publicly admit my error, because
that's
I have no shame when it comes to that. I have no pride. If I'm wrong, I will gladly swallow what little pride I have and admit to being wrong. And I'm first to admit I may be wrong on all of this.
Right.
So, uh, but that's the beauty of free speech. And to that end, I'm grateful that I have this opportunity to talk with people like this and to talk with you, John, and to present this crazy topic. I guess I guess what I'll end with, the way I'll tie all this up. I still have hope. I have hope not just for finding out some of the truth, actual truth to some of this topic, but I have hope. I do have hope in the future of humanity. And I realize that's really difficult for some people to grasp onto, but it's because of all this negativity that we see in the world, political, social, and otherwise. People are always looking for ways to tear each other down. And I hope that's not what I wanted to do with any of the remarks that I made. I'm not trying to tear Lou down. I'm not trying to tear Corbell down. And I'm not trying to tear down Dr. Greer. You know, I still have the belief that they're good people on the inside. There are some bad actors out there, and I won't mention them by name because they don't deserve to have their names mentioned. But overall, my last bit of advice, folks, would be find a way to draw closer to the people that you love. Find a way to maximize the time that you spend with the people who matter the most to you. In my case, it's my wife and my three kids and my friends, my bandmates, the people that make me feel good about being alive, the people that remind me that it's good. There are still good things to be excited about and to be happy about. And the reason I say that is because no matter how dark and dreary and negative the world gets, so long as you still have those relationships and that connection, which I believe extends beyond the bonds of time, the love and the happiness that we experience as humans with those people that we love and care about. Draw closer to those people in these times. If you're a religious person, find ways to draw closer to whatever faith it is that you have. If that's what lifts you up and makes you feel good, go for it. Do it and embrace that. Um, just find ways to pick yourself up and to lift others up if you can. Find ways to serve others and do something nice for yourself at least once a day, right? Because we all deserve a little goodness in our hearts and in our lives. And that's really all that I have to say, folks. I'm not worried so much about my surgery that I'm going to have in a couple of days. I'm not looking forward to it, but the upside is I'm going to get a brand new set of teeth, and I'll have that nice, perfect smile that I've always wanted. Um, so I have that to look forward to, and that's the way I'm looking at it. I'm a fighter. I've always been a fighter, and I know I'm going to come out on the other side. It'll be a couple of weeks before John and I will be able to return with another episode of the podcast, but guaranteed we're going to come back and revisit this topic as well as some others. And John, we've got a new season of Skinwalker Ranch. The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch is going to be coming up in less than I would just putting a guess out there because I don't have any inside information on this, but historically, Secret of Skinwalker Ranch usually starts up in April or towards the beginning of May, and that's about 3.5 months away from now. So lots
Coming.
lots to look forward to. And so yeah, that's what I have, folks. And thanks for listening. Thanks for being here, John. Thank you for devoting part of your Sunday afternoon. And I'm excited to go and watch some NFL football. And I'm gonna enjoy these last 2 days that I have to eat solid food. Just made a bunch of honey garlic baby back ribs that looking forward to enjoying with my family while we're watching some football. And
Be
again,
right over.
go Buffalo.
Right.
So John, closing thoughts or remarks from you?
No, I would just say, I want to say you touched on something. I want to say that you and I we're very similar. We will always tell you we're both tired of bullshit. We are not bullshitters. We will tell things to you straight. We'll tell you what we think. but we also will change our opinions based on new information.
Yes.
And whether that's about Lou, Greer, Corbell, the UAP topic, Barber, you name it, whatever it is, if we get new information, we have the capability to change our opinions. We just have to keep an open mind. And so that's what I want to encourage other people to do is don't get too wedded to a certain perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Keep your mind open, follow the evidence where it leads, and try to be as flexible as possible because this stuff is weird. And also, if you get too frustrated, like I am right now, take a break, go watch some football, go do something else, Um,
Eat some
yeah,
tacos.
eat some tacos. Um, you know, you know what I'm saying. Just take care of yourselves, be kind to yourself. If you get too frustrated, this stuff is weird. Nothing makes sense. We're kind of all in the same boat. Nobody understands anything. We're all just trying to get through it and try to piece
Yeah.
something together. So
Yeah.
stay open minded, be flexible, and stay a little skeptical.
Perfectly said. Stay skeptical. I can't speak to the flexible because I'm soon to be pushing 55 years old here before too long, and
I hear
any
you.
any flexibility I had is long gone. That's way in the past. But
Like,
but no, amen to everything you said, brother. I mean, truly, it's we reserve the right to change our minds. We all should have the right to change our minds whenever new data and new information comes up. I mean, that's what life is all about. That's why you should never close your mind on one particular subject. Again, these people that are convinced that it's ETs, it's got to be ETs. Well, you'd be better served to not completely close the door on that. Just as, you know, I reserve the right to say I may be wrong and maybe it is ETs. You know what? And if I'm wrong, good for you, and I'll gladly admit when I'm wrong. But like John says, I'm going to go where the data pushes me to form my own hypothesis, my own inference, whatever you want to call it. Um, just again, use your best judgment and try not to let your emotions get in the way, which I realize is really rich coming from a New Yorker, but it is what it is, folks. Just be awesome. Be awesome to each other. Be awesome to yourself, and just enjoy the ride. I mean, honestly, enjoy the ride. There are so many twists and turns in this. This UFO thing is like the most kick-ass roller coaster ride. At times, frustrating as hell, but what a great time to still be alive and to watch all of this unfold. If nothing else, it has not been boring, right? Right, John? It is not boring.
right. A little
There's not,
stressful, but not boring. Yeah.
nothing about this has been boring. So, again, folks, to that end, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. If you liked what you saw or hear, just hit that subscribe button down there somewhere, wherever it is, and let us know in the comments. I'm going to be out of commission for about a week or so I may not be able to respond to some comments. But we're also going to be on Facebook. Hit me up on Facebook if you ever have a question or a comment to make. And 2025, we've got some really cool things planned for the podcast. We've got some really awesome guests that we've got lined up that will be coming in the not too distant future. And again, just want to wish my very dear friend and Soul of the Unexplained co host, Roger Stokes, the very best. Roger, we're still praying for you. We're still thinking of you. And we're praying for your wonderful wife, Brittany, as well. And folks, this is for all of you out there that are struggling, whether it's health issues or depression or uh, job woes, whatever the case may be, whatever is getting under your skin and making it difficult for you to find peace and tranquility of any kind, then I hope that you're able to find it quickly. And if you ever doubt, just know that you're important. You are worth something. You are valuable. Just being here on this earth and being a part of our lives, however big or small of a role you may play, you matter. And don't ever let anybody tell you otherwise. And so I'll end with that, folks. Thank you again. Thank you again, John. Um, I will say once again, go Broncos. But Raiders hopefully will do something in the draft. But regardless, hope the Super Bowl is awesome. I hope it's the Bills that are representing instead of the Chiefs. Sorry, Linda. But folks, truly love one another, take care of one another, be nice to bunnies, eat lots of tacos, and I will see you next time on the Soul of the Unexplained. See ya.